The Legend of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Part 1, Chapter 30, Evidence. Meanwhile, Donatello was still in the immense heat and pressure of battle. He had seen exactly what had happened to his brother and was deeply concerned, but felt he could not afford to focus on that now as he was too preoccupied with fighting and had the perfect opportunity to sneak over to the rest of the warehouse. He had coped with most of the ninjas who lay strewn on the floor before him or had run away to hide, but his next opponent took the biscuit. A giant warthog man with an indigo mohawk. Donatello had been convinced his life was as obtusely obscure as possible. He was now staring into the face of something very contrary to that belief. As it loomed over him, it spoke in an oddly familiar voice. "Well, if it ain't that little green boy who beat me and my friend up. Let's see if I can turn you black and blue, bub. Rock steady!" he yelled, as if a pet owner calling over his prized dog. The rhino pounced over like the biggest and most violent Jack Russell ever. "Well, go and fight that little green guy then," the warthog instructed. The rhino lunged on all fours at the comparatively small figure of Donatello, who managed to use his bow to whack the animal in the face. This appeared to cause him distress, and a cut formed on his forehead, from which fluorescent purple blood oozed, but this seemed to heal within a few seconds. "Its blood must contain a similar chemical to what me and my brothers have in our blood," Donatello thought. "I must know more about where these creatures come from, so I can potentially understand where I come from. It simply cannot be a coincidence that the glowing and rapid healing occur in them and us." This train of thought made him physically pause. Very bad idea. The creature got a good left hook in at Donatello, and while it missed, it created a big enough hole in the stack of nearby crates for Donatello to be grateful it had. He awoke from his daydream and dropped into a full-on ninja mode, his knees bent and his upper body leant forward. "Go on then, come at me," he snarled. Both the warthog and the rhino obliged, and Donatello instantly regretted encouraging them. The warthog came from the left and the rhino from the right. The warthog brought its fist back and attempted to punch Donatello in the face. He blocked this by bringing his arm up and knocking the warthog's aim up above his own head. He then countered this with a hard and fast punch to the stomach. "Nyah!" screamed the warthog. He had managed to make the warthog convulse in pain and lose concentration. Donatello turned and struck a roundhouse kick to the rhino behind the knee. The rhino gave way at the knees with a sudden jerking motion. Both were still keen to get up and fight back, but whilst they were not looking, Donatello dropped a smoke bomb and he was lost in a cloud of green fog, leaving the two creatures to stare mystified at the dispersing gas before the rhino gave a roar of great indignation and the warthog stomped and grunted angrily. Donatello presently found himself hiding in a boxy cupboard, listening carefully for when the coast was clear. He could feel his own breath making far too much noise and tried to meditate his breathing to a quieter and less regular state. He achieved this by counting in his head for 4 seconds, taking a breath in and counting for another 4 seconds before breathing out. There was a brief moment of silence, and then he heard the voice of the warthog from outside the door. "Well, I guess he must have gone home. Come on, Rocksteady." "Nah!" The rhino sulked. "Perhaps the rhino mutant isn't capable of speech like his warthog buddy," thought Donatello. "I don't want to go back to the cell either, but we ain't got no choice." Then their clumpy footsteps slowly died away. Then pure nothingness. Donatello gingerly opened the door and crept out of the cupboard. Did I hear what those mutants were saying correctly? Something about a cell? Could they be locked up here against their will? Donatello thought to himself as if recording the details of everything around him on a tape in his brain. Perhaps they are, but I can't have too much sympathy. They did just try to kill me and my brothers. Donatello then tiptoed along the corridor and carefully climbed a set of stairs, trying to avoid being spotted. The further he went, the creepier, darker and more disturbing everything got. Every now and then he had to duck into a room or hide around a corner when a ninja guard came past. There were deep shadows every few metres, as if the architect had loathed light, and everything was painted either black or red. Eventually he decided it was best to stay up against the walls, using the shadows as cover and only sprinting from one shadow to another when he was absolutely certain he could not be seen. Donatello noticed something odd. The walls occasionally had a red footprint symbol surrounded by a circle of the same colour painted on them like a logo. It reminded him of something he couldn't quite place his humongous green finger on. He came to a door marked Storeroom. "Perhaps they may have more of that glowy liquid in there," Donatello suggested to himself. "I could do with a few more samples for analysis." He pulled out a tension wrench from his belt and spent only a few seconds at the lock before the door obediently gave way. He was lucky that his dad had not failed to give them lessons in the skill of shinobi-iri, stealth and entering methods. He strolled in and intensely examined the room. The storeroom was dimly lit and was full of plastic shelving units, each packed with various strange items, boxes, canisters and paperwork. He then picked up a canister of blue fluorescent substance labelled Saki chemical from a top shelf for analysis back at the lair. It didn't take long for Donatello to hone in on a computer in the corner of the room, and it took even less time for him to hack into the computer and reveal nearly everything about the company called TCRI. He then began to read out highlights in his head and store them safely for later in his semi-conscious mind. TCRI was founded in 1996 by Hamado Seki, and it stands for Tokyo Chemical Recycling Industries. Their main goal is to use previously useless byproducts of typical chemical reactions in the science industry and find a use for them. Their current work includes high agility, stamina, possible telepathic and telekinetic powers of the chemical they call the Saki chemical, as well as the potential mutagenic capabilities of a substance referred to as Chemical J. The research here could change the course of science. Why have I not heard any of this before? They must be covering this up really well, Donatello mumbled, intrigued. It's not even like they are a small organization who could easily slip under the radar. They seem to have warehouses and factories in every major city in America, Russia, China, the UK, Germany, France, Japan, and pretty much everywhere else for that matter.